Robin.
You're listening to Opie and Anthony. Opie and Anthony. On the virus. Sirius-XM.
Mr. Rumsfeld, again, with 2012 elections, wouldn't it be good to, and I always wonder why this doesn't happen sooner, to start really grooming a good candidate now? They always seem, the Republicans always seem to wait till the last minute to really kind of get together and get a candidate there, a viable candidate that could take on a Democrat, especially an incumbent.
Well, I think that's true of both political parties. If you think back to the Democratic primary that Mr. Obama won, and I think the reason for that is there's no senior council of leading Democrats or leading Republicans who can go into a smoke-filled room and start grooming somebody. It's the American people and the parties, the people of each party that end up picking these candidates.
But it does seem like it would be a lot more advantageous, especially for the party, if they would kind of work together instead of everybody trying to get their piece of the presidency, to just work together and get a candidate, a viable candidate to run that would really have a shot at winning.
Well, and of course, a primary process can produce a mistake, and you could end up with a candidate who's not very good.
Exactly, and I don't think we want to see that. I definitely don't want to see another 4 years of Barack Obama.
No, I know.
That's for sure.
Incumbents, often get reelected, and I think the Republicans are going to have to be careful not to overreach and to manage their affairs in a way that are responsible, and yet address what the American people really care about. Mm-hmm. And my goodness, this administration has served up a number of targets. How anyone can think that the budget President Obama put forward is responsible is beyond me.
Yeah.
The debt in this country is crushing, and it's going to damage this generation and future generations unless people have the courage to step up and deal with it.
What was it like when you met? There's a picture of you shaking hands with Saddam Hussein. Like, what was that day like? The day you met that dude.
Oh, that famous picture.
The dude who later was hung in a badly lit room.
I tried to tell Louis that was indeed during the time when he was
I'm just curious what that day was like.
And was, okay.
I'm just curious. What was that like to meet that fella?
Fair enough.
Well, it was. I was in Baghdad at the request of President Reagan, and I kind of described this in my book. I met the night before with Tariq Assis, the deputy prime minister, and then the next morning I was invited in to be with Saddam Hussein. And the reason that Secretary Shultz and President Reagan and I all agreed that it made sense was Saddam Hussein was in a war with Iran and had taken our embassy people hostage, and was very hostile to the United States. The United States did not have diplomatic relations with Iraq, and the thought was that the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
How did we manage to get crossways with the two big countries in that region, both of them, and yet they were hostile to each other?
Right.
So we felt that it was a good idea to see if we could reestablish relations, and that ultimately was done shortly after my visit. Now, what was it like? You walk in, there's a Middle Eastern despot. Is he a good guy or a Democrat? No. He's a thug, and he's in fatigues, and he's got a pistol on his hip, and he's a tough guy and not a good guy. On the other hand, people in Iran were worse, and when you get up in the morning and look around the world, there are not a lot of George Washingtons or Abraham Lincolns. We have to deal with people who aren't perfect on occasion.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to tell Louis.
And then, so how many guys do you think you've met that died by hanging?
Oh, Jesus,
Louis. That's a good question.
Yeah, more than one.
Yeah.
More than one.
More than one. See?
Yeah. I've never met anybody I met a girl who hung herself. But I never met anybody who was sentenced to hanging.
He's had to deal with thugs during his career at some point.
Sure.
He's, the world. And a lot of people judge things, I've noticed, Mr. Rumsfeld, a lot of people judge things based on what's going on now. They don't take it in the context of the history and what was going on at the time. Now, during the Cold War, I think we were willing, as Americans and the press, to accept a lot more covert action on the part of the government for our own safety than we are now. Do you think that's a better thing, that there's so much more information available now, or is it a kind of a good thing for the government to have maybe a little bit of a little more covertness in their actions?
Oh, I think you're right. I think that we live in a world where there are relatively few countries that are like we are. Where we have free political systems, and that means that we have got to have intelligence gathering activities if we're going to protect the American people.
Exactly.
But American safety is like the biggest deal to us. American defense. We've got to keep the American people safe. But what if a whole lot of people in other places have to die in order for us to be safe? Like, what if you found out that a lot of America was going to get hurt unless we just took France and just wiped it out? Would you trade France?
Hypothetical.
Would you trade France for Texas and Arizona?
Can you imagine if I answered that question?
Thank you.
What the news lead would be?
Exactly.
It would be like the answering your earlier question, where I would deny that I'm something that you asked me.
Right. He's not going to deny he's a lizard.
But he hasn't officially denied it.
What would be hurt by denying that you're a lizard?
I did not just arrive in town falling off a turnip.
There are no turnip carts in New York City.
Well, he didn't fall off of one.
No,
regardless.
I totally understand. But no, that's fascinating to me. What would be hurt by denying? And I'm not going to ask you to deny it now. I'm more interested in what would be hurt if you denied that you're a lizard.
He's justifying the question.
Sorry, I brought it up. I apologize.
But
I mean, we like to think that we're a comedy show, so we're just kind of asking a silly question.
But that
there,
is
Mr.
fascinating
Rumsfeld.
to me that saying I am not a lizard might be dangerous. I want to know how it might hurt. Wait, how would it hurt your credibility?
This happened.
How did this happen?
There's a guy laughing in the background that is looking up our addresses now.
Mr. Rumsfeld, notice that Anthony Cumia is
a true patriot.
I am right behind you. I love your book, Donald Rumsfeld, Known and Unknown, Memoir, in bookstores now. This thing really flying off the shelves, too.
I want to ask Mr. Rumsfeld his opinion on the unions right now. That's a big topic out there.
Well, it is, and what we've got is a government, an administration, that, according to the data, has fewer people who've ever been in business than any administration in modern history. And what you've got is a lot of people who are lawyers and professional government people, and they don't have the business background. They have very close connections to the unions, and I'm terribly worried about the way that our trade relations are going around the country. The president and the administration have been responding to pressure from the unions with respect to the trade deal with South Korea, the trade agreement with Colombia. Here's Colombia, an important country in our hemisphere, and we've been stiffing them we're missing what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. In Asia, there are all kinds of trade agreements, and the United States is absent without leave. We're not engaged and doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think the answer is it's because of the unions. And we're at a first point in our country's history where there are more union members who are government employees than there are who are in the private sector.
That's a conflict, if you ask me.
Well, it's a worry.
Yeah.
And I think it's also not surprising, then, to note that the average pay of government employees is now higher than in the private sector.
That's not right.
And of course,
why is that not right?
Because it should be the other way around.
Well, of course,
teachers are government employees, right?
And the jobs and the products and the opportunities are all in the private sector, not in government.
Right.
But a teacher is a public employee, right? Is a unionized public employee.
Yes.
So they should be paid well, right?
But it's not a matter of being paid well.
But they should have the power to get together and bargain for better pay and better benefits, right?
Well, if you look around at the school systems, they are in trouble, and they're not providing the kind of education for kids, and so the system isn't working perfectly. Mm-hmm. My wife Joyce started the Chicago Foundation for Education because the Chicago school system was described as the worst school system in America 25 years ago.
Wow.
And here's a great city, a wonderful city, and it had a school system that the Secretary of Education labeled the worst. Now, why is that? It isn't because people are bad. It's because the process isn't working. There wasn't any choice. People didn't have a choice. They paid their taxes, and they had to go to school in their neighborhood, and they didn't have choice. I'm a Milton Friedman fan. I think giving school vouchers so that parents and kids can make those choices. And pretty soon, the schools that nobody wants to choose have to disappear. And the schools where people want to go succeed because they get a good education, they prosper.
Yeah, but American public schools used to be great, and now they're not. So for years and years, they did well without vouchers in charter schools. And then all of a sudden, money got taken out of those systems, and now they're suffering. And then the people that took the money out point at the system and go, ha, you suck because I took your money away. So now we're going to... So what happened? Why did they work before?
I don't think that's the case, what you just said. I don't think that the reason the schools are not doing well today is because the money's not there. I think that you look at the average price that we're paying per student or per school, and it's quite high. It just isn't producing the kind of results that a more competitive system would.
Mm-hmm. How come it worked before, though? When it was simpler, most people went to public schools, and you could just go walk down your public school and get a great education. Like, how come there's a decline when it was working without the competition?
I think probably it was a result of the fact that we were more of a rural country. We had much more parental involvement. There was more smaller elements, and then as we became more of an urbanized country, there was more distance between parents and the schools, more distance between government and the schools, and they just deteriorated.
And teaching the basics of what people need to know instead of a lot of political correct gibberish.
Really? You think that's
in the schools now? I believe that, Louis.
Is teaching evolution? That's what hurt the schools?
No, I'm not saying that. I just think that there's a lot going on in schools that has nothing to do with educating the students and preparing them for life.
I could be wrong, but I think there might have been one other thing. For years we had the draft, and we excluded people from the draft who were students, teachers, or married. And as a result, people who did not want to serve in the military kind of gravitated to getting married or becoming a teacher or becoming a student. And so over time you had a bifurcation of a generation. And that group is now just about retiring.
Right.
The all-volunteer military came in under the Nixon administration in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And so all of those people that up to 1970 now, of course, would be 30, 40 years later. So if they became teachers in the ages of 20, 25, 30, they'd now be retiring.
Yeah.
Hey, did he answer the question about unions? Are you for or against the unions, sir?
What do you mean? I've got no problem with unions. Yeah. What I have a problem with is if unions end up exerting an undue influence in what's taking place in our country and stopping the United States of America from participating in free trade agreements around the world, which are the kinds of things that help to create jobs.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
But if the jobs are in other places and if the United States is getting to compete, who is the United States at that point? Is it General Electric and Walmart, or is it actual people who live in these places like Wisconsin who are asking to be able to sue for their own rights as a union?
Well, if the governor up there, I'm not knowledgeable about Wisconsin. I'm from New Mexico, as the cover of my book shows.
No, you got a polar fleece on.
A handsome picture.
But my recollection is that the governor ran on a platform of doing exactly what he's doing, addressing the fact that the state is bankrupt. And how does he fix that? Well, he can't fix it if the unions won't let him. And he's going to have to find a way to put that state on an upward path rather than allowing it continue to go down, spending more than they take in.
Exactly.
And if the unions are going to try to prevent that, he has to do something about that.
What type of aircraft did you fly?
I was flying, the last plane I flew was an S-2F, which was a Grumman anti-submarine plane.
Oh, that's cool.
Did you have more capability to fly it because of your lizard reflexes?
Stop it!
I've got a thought for you.
Okay, good.
Folks are looking for a present for friends of yours. I spent 8 days recording the unabridged version of my book.
Oh.
About 8 hours a day, and if you want to hear the voice...
And the voice, right.
what you do is you buy the unabridged version of the book, and then you can play it in your car when you're going to and from work, and I'll be right there with you.
I think you need that, Louie.
I'll be right there with you.
You absolutely do.
Tell him, Fred.
The Virus. Sirius-XM. This is the Opie and Anthony Show.